All right. Well, hi everyone. Thank you for your patience with us. Right now we're going to be starting our grad student panel navigating the STEM interview. Before we start, I would appreciate if each panelist can just take a bit of time to just introduce themselves. Let's start off with Yuritza.
Hi, so my name is Yuritza Escalante, and I um, grew up in Central California, so Bakersfield, if any of you are familiar. I'm currently a second year PhD student at The Ohio State University. I'm in the cognitive neuroscience program, where I'm working with Kristen Lindquist, and my research focuses on understanding what happens in the brain while we're experiencing affect, and also how our bodily signal goes into the way that we make sense of our emotions. So yeah, just going into my background, I got my bachelor's in psychology at the University of California, Riverside. And I am the first in my family to pursue a PhD, and hopefully, I hope to become a professor one day. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Thank you, Yuritza. And Jenna.
Okay, hello everyone. I already did my introduction, but I'm going to do the same one again. I am currently a fourth year PhD student. My name is Jenna Ulibarri at the Washington University in St. Louis program, Molecular Genetics and Genomics. Let's see. I think the most important thing that I wanted to highlight about myself is, like Yuritsa, I am the first in my family to get both PhD or an undergraduate degree. That is very central to my identity because I kind of went into this with all of the positives of being a first gen student, like the kind of um, maybe delusional ambition or hope that you can be the first person to do something that nobody around you has ever done before, as well as like the resilience and grit to follow through with that. But I also came in with all of the like negative sides, like lacking all of the hidden knowledge that my peers seem to have, both in undergrad and also in grad school. And I think interviewing is one of the skills that I really didn't think that I had. So going into interviews, I was really, really nervous. And I thought, it's just another skill that I don't have that everyone else is going to have an edge on me. That turned out to not be true. And I want to kind of convey to everyone in this room that that is also not true of them, that you have the skills to do excellent in your interviews, your upcoming interviews, even if this is your first exposure to this kind of like academic, semi-corporate environment. My research, I think I kind of skipped over that, but I do integration of high throughput multi-omics data sets, so whole genome sequencing, proteomics, metabolomics, to discover the underlying causes of diseases affecting the peripheral nervous system, particularly idiopathic peripheral neuropathy, which is a umbrella term for the many different diseases that cause degeneration of the peripheral axons. If a physician cannot figure out why that's happening, then they get their whole genome data, they get their proteomics data, and they send it to us. And I try to figure out kind of why it might be developing. So I think, yeah, I think that's everything. So,
Thank you,
yeah, looking
Jenna.
forward to the panel.
And Paola.
My name is Paola Figueroa-Delgado. I grew up in Lares, Puerto Rico, which is a small rural town in the mountains and an island in the Caribbean. Um, I did my bachelor's in the University of Puerto Rico, studying molecular and cell biology. And as of September, I defended my PhD, so I'm a newly minted doctor in cell biology at Yale University, where I studied the role of a kinase in neuronal remodeling during development and under conditions of stress. And I echo Yuritsa's and Jenna's words that interviews is part of that hidden academic curriculum on how to best navigate and how to best present yourself forward. But you do have the skills, you just need to give it a name, and how to best represent yourself and kind of shake off those imposter fears.
Great. Thank you so much, Paula. And congrats again on defending your PhD. I'm actually really excited for this session. We'll start off with a few questions. I guess the first one, please, describe the structure of how the PhD program interview was for your field, and how can one interviewing in this field stand out? And then whoever wants to start off with that one.
I could go. So for those who are not familiar with the program structure, so even though I'm in the cognitive neuroscience route, it's housed within the psychology department. So yeah, so when applying to neuroscience program, there are explicitly neuroscience PhDs, but mine is housed under psychology. So that means for my program, it was direct admit. Um, and so, yeah, so that may be different depending on the program that you're applying to. And so because they were direct admit for me, all of my interview processes were very different. They ranged anywhere from free flowing, being conversational, to being more structured. And having, yeah, more solid set of questions that were being asked. Just so generally, the part that was consistent across interview processes, and so all the programs that I applied to were all direct admit, were that they involved some kind of Zoom interview first. Um, and even that, it varied. So I had one Zoom interview with the faculty, and then after the first Zoom interview, I was offered for the in-person interview. And then there were other programs where, like there was a lab that I was applying to that had multiple, that was ran by multiple faculty. So I had to meet with each of the individual faculty first, and then I met with the grad students all over Zoom, and then in person. Um, and there was another program where you only went in person if you had an actual offer. So they all varied in that way, and the rest of the interview process was online. So for general structure, generally there was a Zoom portion first, and then after that in person, at varying stages. And then for the actual interview itself, some interviews were completely up to me. It was more the advisor that I was speaking to. She wanted to know if I had any questions about the program. And then after I asked my questions, then she gave her spiel about the lab and just wanted to see if it was a good fit for me. And then there were interviews where I went in and they had a list of questions, more stereotypical interview style, where we went through and I tried my best to answer the questions. But yeah, that was my experience.
Thank you. And then Jenna?
Yeah, so I think my experience was more, I guess, standardized in the sense that I was applying to, I think they were all umbrella programs. So you would request kind of who you might want to interview with that you were interested in, but it wasn't, any kind of like I'm actually going to be directly admitted to their lab. It's just a admission to the umbrella program. And then after that, you kind of have your sub programs. And they were all, for the most part, like a classical interview type situation where they had their set of questions that they would come in with, and they would really, it was quite standard in terms of like they would say, tell me about yourself. You'd give your elevator pitch, and then they would ask, tell me about your research. It was a lot more standard, I think, than I was anticipating and fearing, honestly, because I was ready for those questions that like really throw you off. And that didn't tend to be the case. It tended to follow a very structured format, just a conversation about my research, and classic questions about, what I wanted to do in the future, things like that. So yeah, mine was pretty straightforward formatting.
Thank you, Jenna. And Paola?
I I applied pre-pandemic, so the structure has changed a little bit since then. But I did do apply to two different types of program because my research interests were at the intersection of neuroscience and molecular cellular biology. So I did interview at within two different fields that look for different things in candidates. Um, but the structures depended on the institution and who you met. Similar to Jenna, you provided a list to the track representative or the program director of faculty that you're interested in. And these were either people I listed in my application materials or people that I was really excited about and would like to work with. And then I would meet with them during the interview period. And depending on who they were, they followed either questions that they normally ask or it was really science focused, or they spoke about their science, or they asked me about my science. And others were more conversational about goals and kind of life in general. So it really depended. But the structure is usually very short meetings, about 20 to 30-minute meetings. So not enough to go very in depth, but enough to like make you feel pressured to give good answers. That is to say, you don't have to. That's part of what they're assessing is like your ability to like answer questions when there isn't that much time. Um, but yeah, that's more or less the consistent structure. And then some programs that consider student input into the interview period. So in the process of your day, you're either assigned a student host or a person or a group of people that will be your point people. But they're also more or less assessing whether you'd be a good fit. But not all programs, just some.
Let's take a step back before we go to the other ones. I guess I'm curious for those of you who have either been involved with recruitment at your PhD program or have given feedback or hosted a student. I guess what would you say is something that's not really told during the interview weekend? And I guess maybe that can jump into our question of like, how do you actually prepare for an interview weekend and what made the biggest difference? I'm just curious on the uh, input from like within that process and whoever wants to start. Oh, Jenna, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I just had a thought about this coincidentally because um, unlike it sounds like Paola's program, when you would host a student, I was really prepared for them to be kind of like a covert interview, basically throughout the whole, you get paired with a grad student mentor, and I thought, oh, I'm kind of quietly interviewing with this person too, and they're going to be asked for, what do they think about me? But here at WashU, we just host the students. Like I would get involved in recruitment, and they don't ask for our input. So for me, I think it sounds like it does vary, and you're probably not going to know. Um, so be on your best behavior, but students, in my opinion, are the best resource for like what your experience is truly going to be like. So don't necessarily treat them the same way you would faculty you're trying to impress. Like really do be honest with them and try to get like their opinions and like on, your situation and like if you're going to fit in at the university. So I guess it can go either way, but for us, they're just like buddies for a little while and then we try to impress them and make them like the program and it doesn't affect their chances at admission at all. But it sounds like it varies.
I haven't been involved with hosting a student, but I have been. So, with the lab that I'm a part of, our first year we were at UNC Chapel Hill and we actually transitioned institutions. So, um, maybe my experience in the one interview weekend that I have helped out with may change. But the interview weekend before transitioning schools, I was involved in the social. And what I realized from the grad student side of things is that the grad students really see this as a chance to just have a good time. You get a free meal, we all come together, which does not happen very often, and also get to know the applicants. And for from the grad student side of things, a lot of people were focused in making the applicants feel comfortable. So the grad students are on your side and they are wishing um, for you to get what you want out of this interview weekend. Um, and so, because during that interview weekend, there wasn't anyone there that was interviewing for my lab in particular, but I would echo that the other applicants that I met, whoever they were applying to, the professors didn't ask specifically for my opinion. I think generally at the end they did ask for feedback. So if anybody wants to give feedback, so that is a thing where they will ask, but it's not a very everybody has to say something. It's kind of if somebody would like to share their experiences with these applicants. And then ask for, so because our lab is direct admit, when I was interacting with somebody applying within our lab, it was more focused on making sure that the person finds their best fit and what they're looking for in the program. So it's very, I would say, applicant focused and more helping them find the lab and the program that's best for them.
I would say in my experience, and both as a student and then as a recruiter, when they ask for student feedback, they're looking for two things. One, red flags. If you are causing any issues with other other recruitees, members that come to interview or interviewees, or with other grad students, that is brought up in those surveys, being like, do not accept this person. They did this inappropriate behavior, this inappropriate thing. They wouldn't be a good fit. So that's one. Second is people we find that would be amazing and that we really, 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 really want them. We make sure that in those surveys, we write they are enthusiastic, Yale's their number one choice. They're interested in working with so and so. We thought that it would be incredible because they have this experience and they had this really impactful conversation with so and so. And that really helps because sometimes if they're undecided, sometimes a little bit of a push from people in the program can make them be like, huh, yeah, we should, because they seem to be a great fit. And more so if multiple students like highlight the same interviewee, that usually is a very, very good sign. So normally those are the two ends where input is really considered. The in between doesn't make that much of a difference. So just be considerate to, again, be in your best behavior, even if it's on Zoom. Um, and then kind of to transition to the question that Rob posed, like how do you prepare for these graduate school interview weekends and kind of like what made the biggest difference? It depends on the program. Some programs will send you the interviewers in advance of your interview, which I would take as a sign of at least read about them, what they do, what they're interested in, and come up with 3 to 4 questions about what they do that could help in case there's like lulls of silence. Um, or if you're asked to like start the conversation. Um, and then if you don't know until the day of who you're interviewing, best start with like a know what you're going to say about your own work, and what you've done and why you care about the program and why you listed the people that you listed as like potential interviewers. And if you have time in between, just quickly look up some information. And even if you do have a student host, ask them, oh, what have you heard about this professor? What should I expect? And then rehash after you meet with them. The best way to prepare is kind of understand what you're doing and why you want to be doing it. So why are you pursuing a PhD? Why in that field? Why in that program? And why in that institution? And then with the people that you have listed, why you would like to work with them if they're people you're interviewing with, because that will make a difference when they submit their survey being like, oh yeah, I would love to have them in my lab. Um, and also remembering that I think one thing that helped me was to remember that I'm also interviewing them because I want to make sure they're a fit for me at the long term. So knowing that this is a mutual exchange of interest, of like you're trying to assess if I'm a good fit, but I'm also trying to assess if you're a good fit. Um, but being more confident, like what you've done, which I know is a lot to say because we all feel like imposters, and I'm like, well, I don't know why. But if they got extended an interview, it's a good sign. It means you're a potential fit, and they're trying to make sure that what's on paper matches what's in person.
Thank you, Paola. And we're gonna shift things a little bit out of order because we did talk about red flags. I'm just curious, what would you say are some red flags during actual interview weekends? And looking back, what's something you wish you would have known before you attended your interview weekend?
Could you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, what did you say are some red flags during interview weekends? Just so, and maybe it's probably some context that at times it's a social gathering, but there's also alcohol involved. So yeah.
Um, Red flags would be if people are unhappy, unhappy people don't hide that they're unhappy. They really don't. I think one really helpful thing that I did was that I wrote a bunch of questions that of things that I valued for a PhD program and for a PhD experience and for where I wanted to live. And I would like occasionally just ask random people that I would meet a couple of questions just to have an average of the response and more personalized questions. It's like, oh, do you feel supported? Do you feel like you're prepared for your next step? More generalized questions because you can tell whether people are happy or not by how they respond. So take like some behavioral cues as like, they took a little bit longer than I would expect for them to respond if they're super happy, or they took a deep breath. It's like, yes, these are micro behaviors, but they speak very loudly. But also take it with a grain of salt because it could be an individual experience. But unhappy students, if there are more than one and you interact with many of them, that's one. Another red flag is like if they didn't let you have access to like more senior students, usually it's because they want to hide it because they usually, not always, because they tend to either be very busy or very unhappy or not involved at all, which can impact like how your training goes. Because it's more like, do they invest in like the younger people? Um, Other red flags, it's like how they speak about their colleagues, and like of other institutions or other candidates. Those are also red flags. Um, yeah, and also like when you meet with faculty, like how that interaction goes. It's like your gut knows whether you're like, my nervous system doesn't feel so good. Pay attention to that. Um, those would be like red flags that I would say.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay, I definitely want to echo a couple of those. I love the idea of writing down questions beforehand. Do have those in your back pocket. Again, the students are going to be your best resource for that. They'll be honest for the most part. If you ask things like, a little bit more pointed, because you also have to keep in mind it tends to be the people who are happy, or at least somewhat happy, that volunteer to do like recruitment. So the people who are truly not having a good time tend to be kind of not involved. So have that kind of also in the back of your head and maybe like tailor your questions accordingly. Like say things like, you know, obviously, are you happy? And if they say, yes, no, I feel supported, I don't, that's good information. But also things like, how many students in your program are in their sixth, seventh, eighth year? And, like, why is that? Or like things like, at what point did you feel like there was any drop off of support at, after like maybe like QE or like proposal or anything like that? If they say, oh yeah, there's more support, towards the end, but maybe not towards the end, or like towards the end, but not towards the beginning. Just like ones that are not as vibes based, because if it is vibes, then a lot of people who are like they'll be like, yeah, I'm doing well. But things that you might think are going to be like important for you or your situation, so that it's a little bit more analytical, just so that you can, assess from an objective angle of like, what is going to work for me and what is not. Because I think a lot of like red flags will be more about fit rather than about like something that's genuinely bad. Sometimes there's something genuinely bad. And so keep an eye out for those. But like when I'm thinking back on my interviews, I think the ones that were red flags for me was just when I got to, I won't name the school, but like I started the interview. They were all over Zoom, but the first person who came up was like this very austere elderly gentleman in front of his fireplace in a suit. And I was like, ooh, okay. I don't know if this is the vibe that's gonna work for me, because I tend to be more like relaxed. I'm again not from a very like intensive academic background. So that in contrast with the interview I had here with who turned out to be my thesis advisor later. He popped up on the screen and he was in his office in his WashU hoodie and he was like, hey, what's up? How are interviews going so far? I was like, okay, this is like just kind of like a green flag for me. So be aware going into interviews what flags you are going to be looking for ahead of time. So just and then afterwards evaluate and say like, how do I feel after those interviews? Like not just how you did, but if you feel like, that whole thing went badly, it might not be because of you. It might be because like the interviewers were all dry and like you didn't really get along with a lot of them. And that's, you might start to blame that on yourself and be like, oh, I should have brought myself forward more. I should have done better. But also be like, maybe that's a sign that this whole environment's kind of not great. It might not always be you. So keep that in mind too, I think.
I also want to echo a couple of things that other people said. The whole having questions prepared ahead of time, definitely. There's a big emphasis on questions, so prepare a lot for various people. And I also like that idea of asking multiple people the same question and then getting the average of their response. Um, One thing that I wanted to emphasize is paying attention to the way that I paid a lot of attention to the way that grad students interact with each other. I think that's where you pick up on, are they actually friends? Is this really a collaborative, warm environment? Or you can tell when people are maybe more cordial or more formal with each other, and that gives you an idea of the general vibe of the program. Um, so paying attention to that. And also, I would say another thing is to pay, or sorry, I was, yeah, sorry, I forgot the next thing that I was gonna say. Okay, so paying attention to the way that people, yeah, sorry, I'll come back. I'm gonna think about it. But yeah, just like paying attention to how grad students are interacting with each other, I would say, tells you about how the program um, is.
Great. And then moving on to the fourth question, since we're talking about the actual program, can you give an example of how you evaluated program culture during your visit? What would you say were some green flags and red flags? And, you know, feel free to mention this across like your different type of PhD interviews.
Okay, sorry. So I remembered what I was going to say before, and it ties with this. Okay, so one piece of advice that I got before interview weekend that actually helped me while I was on the interview weekend was the way that you see the other people applying with you. I think it's easy to see them as competition, but it's better to reframe that as seeing those other people as people who are going through this experience with you and also talking with them about their experiences. So going back to this picking up on red flags or green flags, there was one particular interview, there was one interview weekend in particular where at the end of the night, when after the interviews occurred, all of us applicants, or a good group of us, not everybody, but a group of us got together and we were like, okay, what are the red flags that people picked up on? And because different people pick up different things, so when you come together and you talk as a group, you'll start to pick up on the commonalities. And also, everybody interacts with different faculty as well. So you'll pick up on people having similar experiences with similar faculty. And if these are faculty that you're planning on working with, it'll help you get an idea and it'll just bring up things that maybe you wouldn't have noticed if you wouldn't have spoken to the other people. And then also, just in addition to that, now being in grad school, um, once you're in grad school, some of those people that you meet during interview weekend, they become your friends. Maybe you both end up going to that to the same program, and then once you're in the program, you're excited to see each other. Or chances are, these people end up doing similar research as you, and you end up seeing them at conferences, and then it ends up being exciting. Just meeting with these other people that you met at such an early time in your career and then seeing them develop into a researcher in the same way that you are. So that's also, yeah, there was um, that was also another thing that I found helpful to picking up on red flags and green flags to a program. And also a program is never going to programs or like the interview weekend is meant for the program to impress you and give a good impression. So I also wanted to, yeah, so take what the program tells you about the program with a grain of salt in a way, um, because the subtle um, signs that show whether a program is right for you or if there's any red flags, they're going to be subtle. So it's going to be up to you to pick up on these subtle differences. But yeah, that's where it becomes helpful to talk to other people.
Thank you. And then Paola or Jenna?
I
Yeah.
think I'm coming back to like targeted questions for this one because, again, grad students, best resource, but also the faculty, um, they'll ask you, about your research. You talk very, very much about their research too, especially if you can get them talking a little bit. It's always helpful. But then at the end, they'll always say, what questions do you have for me? I tend to like slip in like a culture-based question at that point. I think one of the ones that um, I asked that I got a lot of insight from was, when you have a rotation student in your lab, what makes them like, what do you look for that makes them like a good fit for your lab or like a bad fit for your lab? Because then depending on, what they say, you could be like, okay, this is kind of what they're really going to be, you know, thinking about when I'm in this program. And that's like, that can tell you a lot about the culture, as well as like, um, kind of asking like, things like, who are your friends like to the grad students? Say, did you stay friends with your program or did you branch out? Or, how often do you guys go out together? Is there like a built-in social structure or not really? And is that true for PhD students, master students, like postbacks, or is it just kind of segregated? Because I think probably if you're a grad student, there will be like built-in structures to like of support. But ask about them because I have a couple mentees right now where there are not seminars, they don't take classes together, and they kind of just are direct admit into their lab. So really their only option for support is the people around them in their lab and their collaborators. And I think that that's kind of not ideal. So try to investigate like the structures of support and the community like that the grad students there have and where they found it before you kind of go into it. Because I think that was a great idea about, seeing if none of the grad students know each other in the room that you're interviewing, that's probably a bad sign, I would say. That means, yeah, they don't talk much. So that would be probably my tips.
I will just add one thing. I think it's very program dependent on how you interview because sometimes if you go through umbrella programs, it spreads to tracks and then that spreads to departments. So you're going to be constantly changing culture and it's not consistent. So, and also kind of like now in hindsight, because I'm pretty much at the tail end of my PhD or at the end. Um, at every stage of your PhD, what you need as a PhD student is different. So as you are interviewing, kind of evaluate first 2 years because that's really what you can see at an interview stage, which would be rotations and could you get a lab and is it funded? After that, it's going to be very department specific. And if you know that the lab that you're joining, because the program is structured where you immediately join a lab, or if within the first year you have to join a lab, then know kind of like how that structure within a department looks like. So you could ask people during interviews like, oh, how does the departmental support look like? Not the track, not the graduate program, the department look like for students. And then, oh, I'm very interested in these faculty. Do you know how they are with their grad students? Because it's going to very much defer throughout your entire PhD, and your constant supports are going to be your faculty and your department. Especially if you go through an umbrella track, after your first year, you're not their responsibility. So just be cognizant about the structure of the program you're applying to. So when you're writing your questions up, you can be more specific of like, okay, like these are the departments I would like to work in. I'm going to start asking like, how does the department do qualifying exams? Is the qualifying exam a style that I feel comfortable with, or I will be challenged? How do they support their students during that? Do they expect that while they're also studying for their quals that they're supposed to be 24/7 in the lab? So just like be a little bit more strategic on like, okay, first 2 years, what is expected of me? And how do they support me achieving those goals? Is there support? Is there no support? And then later on, it's like Are people taking a long time? Why are they taking a long time? Is everyone leaving academia? Or is everyone staying in academia? So just like if people leave academia, are they supported and encouraged? Are there resources for them? If they're staying in academia, same thing. So it's like, think about these things. Is there, like, once they join a department, is there a director of graduate studies? How is that director of graduate studies? What is the structure of the thesis committee? What is the structure of the qualifying committee? I know this is overwhelming, but these are like little intricacies of the hidden curriculum that will impact the culture. Because you can have friends in your program, you can have friends outside of your program, but how your program is run at different stages of your PhD is going to impact your own experience. Great for support for your grad, completely encourage it because my community is my safety net. Beyond that, every single other aspect of your career is influenced by your department and your advisor. The rest will change.
Great.
Sorry,
Thank
that
you.
was my two.
No, thank you, Paola. And then just going to our last question, before going into the Q&A, and feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A function. What were the faculty interviews like? Did they differ within or across programs? And feel free to talk about any unique interviews that you had.
I kind of touched on this in the beginning, but so when I'm meeting particularly with um, faculty, so I did meet with the faculty that I was directly applying to work with, in addition to other faculty that were in the program, and every interview was different, so I wasn't really sure what to expect going in. I just knew that it was going to range. But there were some interviews where it was more just, they did ask the about you, like your pitch that you give. So that is something good to just have prepared. Just going over your general overall research track and how you got to where you are today and what you want to research. Um, but so there were some where, yeah, so that generally was asked for. And then also just more centered on the applicant, if I had any questions about anything, what it's like to live in the area, um, anything about the program, but also asking these more important questions that Paula was referring to about whether the faculty supports or asking these questions about how the faculty will prepare the grad student for what they want to do after graduating. But that's also something that you could research as well to see where people in their lab are at, where they tend to go to after graduating from PhD programs. I have heard of interviews, and also there was one of my interviews in particular that had me maybe read a research paper, and then I had to be prepared to discuss that paper. Um, so in that one, I would say, yeah, I needed to make sure I had that preparation ahead of time so they could vary in that way, and then also asking these more specific questions. One thing as well, going with the faculty interview that um, I didn't realize beforehand, but that so you'll likely get questions asking about your skills. What are your weaknesses? Where do you need to build? And that question isn't meant to trick you. I think that's something that I didn't really realize, or I would get nervous answering that question. But it's really so the advisor has an idea for the kind of training that you're going to need once you get into the program. They're aware that once you're in the program, you're going to learn a lot of skills that includes statistics, that includes coding, any of these more technical skills that you might not have before grad school. If you don't have them already, that's okay. And it's also okay to be honest about them. And just because you're admitting to not having this strong, I don't know, stats background or something, that doesn't mean you're not going to get accepted. Um, yeah.
I think for me, the faculty interviews, that was the thing that was the most nerve-wracking about all of applying to grad school because again, like I was like, I'm talking to the type of, at least in my head, it was a big shift of like, I'm talking to the type of person that like is so far out of like anything that I do, other than like my um like advisors who were great. They helped me get into, or like they convinced me that I could do a PhD, but they were the only ones who I knew that were like in an academic environment. And I was like, oh, now I'm talking to this person who has like an H index of like 100. So I'm very, very nervous. And that turned out to be like not really have a foundation, to be honest, because especially now looking from this perspective, a lot of the faculty, it's not that deep for them. So, I mean, they are evaluating you, of course, but they have so much on their plate that it does kind of just become, oh, they're having a conversation and they go through their calendar and they see, oh, I'm going to talk to this person, for an hour. So it is a bit more conversational for them. And you can use that to like lean back on just like your skills of like talking to an interesting person and keeping like a positive mindset, even if it's a little bit fake it till you make it. I think that was the biggest thing that helped me in faculty interviews is like getting on there and being like, oh, this is just a really cool person that I get this opportunity to have a conversation with. I'm like, this is really exhilarating and exciting. And even if I don't get in, like, wow, this is like kind of fun. And just like between, you have like maybe I think I had like 15 minutes in between, just kind of meditating on that and thinking like, even if I don't get in, they're going to give me like an Uber Eats gift card, and like just like keeping a positive like mindset really helped, I think, a lot stay excited about my research and like bringing my best foot forward. And even when I had a really bad interview here at WashU, um and I had to like quickly recover from it, and just like being able to kind of fall back on that, like, this is like really cool that I even get to do this, and like I'm so happy to be here, and like I even if that one didn't go well, I'm excited for the next one. And like the mixer is going to be really cool. And like just trying to keep that at the forefront, I think will really come through in like your body language if you're in person or like over Zoom, just staying like excited and enthusiastic about your research, and like your skills and your interest in the program. So keeping that at the front really, really helped with my nerves a lot. But I definitely had them, and you probably will have them too. It's okay.
Yeah, I'll echo what the panelists have said. I will add, so when I was interviewing, I had like two different flavors of faculty interviews. One was very nitty-gritty on like, talk to me about what you worked on. So it's like be knowledgeable about what you did and how exactly that works. There were faculty that asked me to literally do a shop talk about my research and draw it out and explain it and answer any of their questions, because ultimately these are also very curious people and are excited that you're excited and want to understand. So don't feel intimidated like they're challenging you because they want to catch you in a mistake. They just don't really know where the limit is, and like the anxieties that you're bringing in. As Jenna said, like most of them, this is not that deep for them. So when they're asking you a lot of questions, because they are genuinely very interested and want to know and want to learn from you, because either they haven't heard it before or really want to know. So take it as a good sign of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna explain it to you. Here is what I did. This is what we care about. These are the questions we have. This is what would be nice to follow up with, but I don't have the time. But it's really exciting. So be excited about that. And then the second flavor that I had was them talking about their research. And I know a lot of advice I also got this advice when I was interviewing. It's like, just let them talk. No, you can let them talk, but ask questions, ask meaningful questions. Be like, oh, is this related to this thing that you remember from this class that you took? Because they'll be like, oh, they're making connections. Or ask them about like, oh, do you think this is important for X or Y? Because likelihood if you're meeting with them, it's because they're somewhat related to what you've done, or you can make connections within your field or from classes or from your own research. So try to ask, you don't have to come up with the best questions in the world, but be intentful with the questions that you do ask to show that you are paying attention, to show that you are interested in what they're talking about, to show excitement of what they're doing and the research that they're doing, right? Because even if they're not going to be your thesis advisor, they might be in your committee, they might be in your department, they might be best friends with your thesis advisor. You never really know. So just make sure that you're asking questions. One I got like really weird interview questions. One that I had just literally opened a piece of data on a computer, explained briefly what it was, and then said, "What's the next logical experiment?" I was like, I don't know the system, I don't know this. And I was like, well, based on this and this, I would assume you would want to be interested in following this. I don't know the necessarily technical question, but this, or like the technical skill that you would implement, but this would be the question that I would follow. And he was like, yeah, this is what we did. So it's more like they really want to see if you're a critical thinker, that if you're actually present in the interview or just letting them talk, to be proactive, be active in that process. There's other really they just want to see if like you're critical and if you did the things you said you did. That's pretty much kind of what they're aiming to get, and seeing if they like talking to you, because if they like talking to you, they're like, oh yeah, I'd love to have them in the program, they seem great.
Great. Thank you, Paola. And then, in the interest of time, I do want to be cautious to our panelists. I'm going to ask two questions at the same time from our attendees. The first one is, does attending mixers and meeting mission teams help make the interview process earlier? And on that same note, did you take out notes and to ask and write down info during the interview, or did you read questions beforehand and write information after the interview? Whoever wants to tackle these.
You're welcome to have a notebook with you with like the page already set. So if there's something really interesting that they say, you could and be like, oh, do you mind if I quickly jot it down? Um, but when it came to like remembering the discussion I had in the interview, usually you have a period of like 10 to 15 minutes between each interview. So I would write down like three main key points that I could use to remember a conversation. So then after my interview weekend was over, I could send them a thank you email with those specific things in mind, which was like, it was really interesting to hear about your research with blah, 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 and how you did this, and your experience with X and Y. I'm really looking forward to the possibility of joining the next cohort. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was great meeting you. I hope to see you in the fall, or like to see like whatever you feel comfortable writing. Um, but I wouldn't like necessarily like take notes with everything. Just like if there's something really important during, sure, but then afterwards, just quickly you leave their office, jot down.
Great. Thank you, Paula. And then, does someone want to answer the mixers and meeting and mission teams individuals? Yeah.
For the mixers, this is also going back to just paying attention how grad students interact with each other, but also how they interact with you. So I noticed that it's different I did find attending these mixers helpful, by the way, because this is also another just casual setting that you'll be able to observe to see how people act differently and more in this casual setting compared to more academically when you see them throughout the days and structured during this more structured format. But so within the mixers, there was a difference that I could see as well with grad students having this mindset of making the applicants feel comfortable. But there was also some where the grad students more kept to themselves and maybe didn't engage with applicants as much. So that's also something to pay attention to, how the grad students are responding to the applicants, and that more likely shows in the mixers where interacting with applicants is optional. Whereas throughout the rest of the day, you'll likely get paired with a grad student where they'll make sure that you know where you're going and they'll answer questions. Um, and that is more structured. And then in the mixer, yeah, you get to see more of this, how grad student, just, yeah, the environment of the program more generally. But yeah, I would say it's helpful to getting more information about, yeah, how grad students are in the program.
Thank you. And then just for the next question, maybe this one for Jenna. What would you say was the most challenging interview question that you didn't expect to get? And how did you answer that question?
Let's see. I think the most challenging, I didn't get any out of like left field questions that I was expecting, like you know, what's your favorite animal and why type of thing. Like it's nothing that was like insane like that. The most difficult ones I got were from professors who knew who knew my field of research, and they asked, you did this, why did you not do this? So they would have like a very like, alternate like pathway to it, because I knew my research, of course, up and down, but I didn't sort of think of, oh, what are the pathways that like this person would have taken and like why not? So I think that was like the hardest one for me, was like when you're talking to somebody who is inside your field, do be prepared, knowing about what they do. They might have like their favorite technique, their favorite like assay or whatever. They might ask you like, why haven't you used mine? And it is, again, like it's not too deep. They are just like asking because they're curious, but be prepared to like kind of dig into your research, I think would be like my biggest tip.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. And now we have our final two questions. How do you navigate self-disclosure when asking questions surrounding challenges or weakness in your life? What is a good balance between authentic and not giving a sob story? If anyone wants to answer that.
I think it's very case dependent, because you have already submitted an application, and some applications do have essays for any challenges that faculty or admissions committee should be aware of. And all the faculty usually have access to your application materials prior to the interview, so they can review it. So if they have any concerns or questions, they'll bring it up during the interview. But it truly just depends what it is. But normally there is no need to bring it up yourself if it's not prompted. Because again, you're being interviewed, and sometimes that is disclosed during your application period. And if they do have genuine concerns, they'll bring it up. I remember one of my interviewers at Johns Hopkins had asked me about why I did two research experiences concurrently. And I had to explain while I was finishing one up while I started the other one, so I could see it through the entirety of the way. But they were like concerned about that, and I made sure I addressed it. Um, so it's like if they have a concern, they'll look into it. But don't be discouraged that you have to disclose whatever it is. I'm happy to also talk offline if there's something specific that's in your mind that you feel concerned about, that either will be brought up or that you feel obligated to bring up. But normally, if you have an interview, that's kind of like passed on.
Great. Thank you, Paula. And then just for the final question for each of you, how would you address this very common question? Why should we select you from other applicants? And on that note, I would say also feel free to leave some words of encouragement for our prospective applicants this cycle.
Okay, I guess for this one, I would say the best thing you can do is emphasize fit, because this does get a bit dicey if you say like, I am better at research in this particular area than all the other people here, because you really don't know who else they're interviewing. It could be a future Nobel Prize winner. So if you emphasize like, it's not necessarily about like, why I'm better than the other applicants, it's that I'm a better fit for this particular university, this particular program, this particular lab, like we just align um, the best. Like it's like I can tell that this is a close fit. And that's why like I think I'm a better candidate than like a lot of the people around me. So I think keeping it that way, because you don't want to, definitely do not disparage the people around you. That's like the worst avenue you could possibly take. So don't take that. Highlight your strengths and why those align with the specific culture at that university, I think would be my best advice for that specifically. And then in general, again, keep a positive mindset at the front. You are here for a reason. Imposter syndrome will creep in, but it's fake. It's lies. They're not making mistakes. These people are experts in figuring out who belongs here or who has done the work and has proven that they are capable of succeeding in academia and in science. They're not making mistakes. There was no back door left open that you snuck into. So trust, if you can't trust in your own sort of ability to succeed here yet, then remember that they're not, it's not an accident. You're here on purpose. You know your research. Nobody knows your research better than you. So just show them that that is true and you'll do great. And if you don't, there's next year. It's not the end of the world. You could do it. This is a rough year for sure. Everybody knows that. So yeah, if you have a bad interview, don't let it ruin the rest of it and you'll do fine.
Thank you so much, Jenna. And then, Yuritza or Paola, why should we select you from other applicants? And final words of advice to attendees.
Yeah, I'd say for the why should we select you, I would echo Jenna as well too, just emphasizing on yeah, exactly that research fit, exactly why you're interested. And coming from this place of excitement about research, excitement about the topic that you are interested in studying further. Um, and just, yeah, emphasizing why your interest in the type of research that you want to do is fit with that lab, and also highlighting your strengths and what has prepared you to be able to conduct that research in the future. And also just being honest with the type of environment that you are looking to enter and the kind of environment that you are looking to create. Um, Ultimately, being being honest about not only your research interests, but also the environment that you're looking for, that's only going to lead you to the right place. So sometimes when you're in these interview processes, it almost feels like you're searching for the right answer because you want to get accepted. But it's not all about just getting accepted. It's more about finding the place that is meant for you. So even if being honest about your research interests means that you end up getting rejected from a lab, but because that reason is because that advisor thinks they cannot support you in the type of research that you want to do, that's okay. And that's the best case scenario for both ends. Um, so yeah, just being honest about, or just highlighting your research interests and how they align with the lab. And as for final words of encouragement, I would say just, yeah, just try your best. Try your best and try to have fun with it as much as possible. Again, looking at the other applicants as people that you're going through an experience with, it's um, a uncertain time and a scary time for everybody. And especially if you are the first person in your family going through this process, it feels like a lot of uncertainty every step from getting that first email, from getting to in person. Um, it just feels like this constant cycle of I don't know how I did, and I don't know if I'm going to make it to the next step. Um, and that, yeah, just trying your best regardless, and just knowing that you tried your best with the information that you had at the time, and making peace with the outcome that comes out of it. And yeah, again, as Jenna mentioned, there's always next year, and um, yeah, people apply multiple times all the time. So whether you get accepted, whether not, um, yeah, whether you get accepted or whether not, or whether you end up going a different route, it's all about finding ultimately the path that's meant for you. So yeah,
Thank you.
but yeah, I believe, um, yeah, I believe in all of you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Paola.
As a response to the question, why should we select you from other applicants? I echo what Yuritza and Jenna have said about kind of sharing your enthusiasms and motivations. Be very be very descriptive, and also show that with how you're projecting your response. Like I'm very and like like I've met the other people that the program is interviewing, and they seem fantastic, and I would be really excited to have them as colleagues. I think I would be a great fit for this program because the track or department is following the direction of, like, for example, my department really focuses on membranes. It's like I'm really exciting that the department's at the forefront of studying and answering questions relating to membrane and membrane dynamics and membrane regulation. And more specifically, I'm very interested in these two questions. And I've identified that so, and yourself study this question and in from different contexts. And I'm excited that the department works on these different systems and that I have the opportunity to work with like the leading experts in answering the questions that I'm passionate about and developing skills in these different systems and these different technologies. And I'm even more excited about the program because it offers me opportunity to learn skills in X, Y, and Z, and also be able to develop in like additional soft skills like grant writing, public speaking, because it gives me the opportunity to present on departmental seminars and participate in departmental retreats. So that department seems very engaged in intellectual discourse, and that makes me really exciting because that means I get a lot of feedback on my work and that'll be supported in my research. So just be very intentional with your response and like how you're really looking forward to join that research community. And then be like, and I'm excited to bring my experiences with X, Y, and Z. I don't think anybody really expects anyone coming into a program to be an expert because that's what you're doing a PhD for, to become an expert at something. So nobody's expecting you to know everything and anything. But we are expecting you to have excitement and be excited because every single day of your PhD will be a challenging day that you have to be like, I love what I do and that's why I keep showing up. Otherwise, why do it? I think my culminating piece of advice is to think about how you're feeling in the moment. Because both how you're communicating your excitement, so pay attention to, I know interviews can be very exhausting, especially if they're back to back. While you're taking classes, if you are taking classes, it can be draining. But think about how sometimes you can talk to a friend, and if they're really having a hard time, you feel drained afterwards. So think about like, I need to show up to every single one of these interviews with my most enthusiastic self, because then the faculty are like, wow, I feel so like rejuvenated from that conversation. I feel so excited. So think about yourself as like a friend you would love to have a conversation with because they're always just like so super duper excited. Do that in your interviews because that communicates them excitement and then you're serious about it. And that is a little bit contagious. And then think about like, how did that make me feel? Was I happy about it? Was I putting on like a front because I was like not feeling it? And that says a lot about like, is it a good fit for you? So both do your best to show up in your enthusiastic self. Don't like oversell it, but just be real. And also kind of check in after every single conversation. How do I feel about this? Do I really feel like I would succeed here? Do I feel like I will be intellectually challenged? Am I in my comfort zone? Do I feel like I can have colleagues not only in faculty, but in my peers, both at my same cohort or like a year my senior or like super, super senior? Do people look accessible? Are they accessible? How accessible are they? So think about those things and trust yourself in the process. And even if things don't work out, it's not the end of the world. There are always opportunities ahead, and trust that you have the ability. And some, like, again, and I say this because I've had students in the past go through this. A rejection doesn't mean you're not good enough. Sometimes it's funding, sometimes it's fit, sometimes it's like the faculty that you're passionate about don't have space in their lab, so they would recruit you for no reason. So just think that it's not you, it's the application. I know that's hard to see, and I know that's hard to understand at this stage, but if it happens, it's not the end of the world and there's more life ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Paola. And thank you once again to each of our panelists for taking the time. And thank you, attendees, for attending. We hope everyone has a great winter break. And this webinar will be recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel. Take care, everybody. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Good luck.